Welcome, everybody. We're going to start at 5:30. I just wanted to get on and make sure that everything was working out. So thank you for coming early. Here we go. I'm really excited. Welcome to our first masterclass of the psychology of success. We have a lot in store for us. So, we are going to talk about the psychology of success and learn how to build key steps to live a happier and healthier life. And really, a life worth living is filled with connecting to our internal sense of value and meaning. It's understanding the good enough self and building trust to be vulnerable. And so in my book, we just actually went through our first success group. And in the first book, part 1 of key steps to live a happier and healthier life, we went through a life worth living. And so we looked at connecting to our internal sense of self, what our values are, what our beliefs are, how do we find a purpose-driven life versus just being productive. And that allowed us to remove the sense of perfectionism and start building more trust and vulnerability with ourselves. And we'll talk about the trust feedback loop in just a little bit, and how that allows us to build important connections with others. I am Jennifer Evans. I have started Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions, and I've built this team as a way of really connecting to my vision, which is that I help others and empower others to live happier and healthier lives. So I do this in a variety of ways. I am a licensed mental health counselor, licensed professional counselor in certain states. And I use my cognitive behavioral theory model as a way of providing support to others, whether that's a therapy session, whether that's a coaching program. I've got a couple of books. So I've got a lot of supports. My goal is to meet everybody where they're at in their stage of change so that they can feel as if they can get help. And my biggest goal and vision is to destigmatize mental health and to make mental health accessible for all. So let's dive in. What is success? Success is this kind of term that we throw around a lot, but when we actually get down to it, we actually don't really know and don't connect with our own personal definition. And the funny thing is that success and crisis are both the only two terms that are self-defined. So your idea and definition of success may be different from somebody else. And really what it is trying to find this idea of maintaining a sense of wellness that really allows us to stay towards the outcomes that we desire. And what we find in my practice is that we can't control the outcomes, but we can control the processes that we put in place. So when we have unshakable confidence, when we are on our pathway to success, then we are really putting a lot of processes out there and we're finding meaning behind those processes. And what that does is allow us to be present so that we can help others achieve their outcomes and to be present so others can come and be received by us so that they can help us with our outcomes. And so there's a couple of key aspects that we're going to talk about today. And that is that we are all in recovery, that every single one of us is on a recovery spectrum. And so we are either relapsing, we're healing, or we're mindfully trying and battling to stay present. And I know like mindfulness and staying present feels like something we throw around a lot. But honestly, if you really think about it, it is natural for us to have our mind kind of wander and drift. And so when that happens, then it's really hard for us to be in the here and now. And when we're not in the here and now, then that's when we're opening the door for opportunities for negative cycling. So it can happen very, very quickly. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a little bit. But we do have no control over our outcomes. It is just kind of, we accept that through radical acceptance and mindfulness, we accept that life is chaotic. And so we have no control over the outcomes. And that can come with some very devastating and heartbreaking and difficult experiences. But we also know that the chaos in life brings miracles and serendipitous moments and times where we're just flabbergasted at, all of the opportunity that's presented to us. And so there are these kind of pulling of energy that we have no control over, and we're trying to find a balance amongst that. And so, one control that we definitely have, and our only control, is the processes we put in place and the fact that we can control our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. And I know there are times where sometimes it doesn't feel like we can control our feelings, our thoughts, and our behaviors. But I do promise you, in a grounded state, we do have the agency. And so that's what we're trying to do. And that's what success is. It's finding who we are, connecting inside to who we are, what our values, what our beliefs are, and then putting out processes that emulate that. And that will allow energy to come to us that will be connected to our values. And it'll allow us to put energy out there that, again, is connected to our values. And we're going to find that there are actually 3 pillars to success. And they are accountability, purpose, and dedication. Accountability is this idea that we are vulnerable, we're opening ourselves up to others, we're opening ourselves up and being honest with ourselves as well. So everything that we are doing to put ourselves out there, we have to do the work on the inside first. And that can be really, really difficult, and more difficult than we even realize. Well, accountability is also this trust feedback loop. And so the trust feedback loop is, and we'll get into this in a little bit, is that when we have doubt, then we withhold from ourselves. And that doubt and that uncomfortable feeling really will build a negative cycle. And we'll look at that negative cycle in just a minute. And then accountability is behavioral activation. And behavioral activation is a cognitive behavioral term. And what it means is that we just do things. So there's a couple of feedback loops that go on kind of kind of wired in. We don't really know. They just kind of implicitly happen. The trust feedback loop is one. And then the depression feedback loop is another one. Anxiety is another feedback loop. So when we don't do something, then we must be depressed. And when we're depressed, then we don't want to do something. And behavioral activation really gets into that and interjects in that feedback loop so that we're constantly kind of doing something so we don't get into the feedback loops of depression and anxiety. And anxiety is I'm afraid, so I don't want to do anything. And then I don't want to do anything, so I must be afraid. Both will get us into the negative cycle, which we'll see in just a little bit. And then we have purpose as one of our pillars of success. And that's really finding, a lot of times when people talk about success, they say, find your why. What is your why? And that's because there are times where we just don't have it in us. And we're like, oh, I'm so depleted. I can't do this anymore. It's not working. I don't want to do this anymore. And so the why is what gets us going. It's like, I don't have it in me, but I will muster one thing up because of this is so important. That can be our kids, that can be our spouse, our parents. It can be anything that really means so much to us that we're willing to go the extra mile just to prove the ability that we are present with that experience. And goals and objectives are our roadmap to success. So they are these pillars that we are building so that we know kind of where we're going. Again, we're accepting that the outcomes are not in our control. So it's these the vision is a vague idea of what we want, security, we want financial freedom, we want a sense of community, of love, different things like that, a big family to surround us, whatever the case may be. And the goals or objectives are kind of these things that these goalposts we are looking for so that we kind of understand where the road is going. And intention setting does that as well. Intention setting is this idea that we kind of set a purpose daily or weekly or monthly, whichever one you want to do. I personally do weekly intentions. So every week I kind of focus on one specific thing. And so my goals and what I want to do is going to be based on that intention, trying to manifest that energy. And a vision is the idea of being able to see what it is you want to do. Dedication is our last pillar of success. And it's all about mindfulness, atomic habits, and this good enough self. The good enough self is really relinquishing this idea of perfectionism and accepting you for who you are and the best that you can do within your capacity. Atomic habits are the things that we kind of do we just do them. Like we don't really think about them anymore. They just kind of happen. And mindfulness is the state of presence, just allowing life to present to us and us to say, does this serve me or not? So let's start looking at each one a little more closely. Building accountability is really how we are connecting our intention, engaging in setting processes for our outcomes. It allows us to be able to be open and engaging with others. And so when I talk about the trust feedback loop, I'm talking about the doubt that we have, we start to avoid and we start to withhold for ourselves, right? So let me see. If you've ever had something, we often fear success and we often fear failure. And they are hand in hand, and it goes very much with the good enough self. And so when we fear success or failure, we'll often self-sabotage, we'll often look at external validators, we'll compare ourselves to others, and we'll do limiting beliefs, we'll share, negative narratives to ourselves. And so what we want to do is, as that is happening, we'll kind of be like, oh, let's not do that. Let's go over here. Let me go play a video game. Let me get on my phone and start doom scrolling. So we'll do things that will be something else so we don't engage in the thing that is distressing to us. And then when we do that, then what we're doing is when we engage with others and we're still avoiding this one thing, what we're doing is we're withholding from other people. And when we're withholding from other people, then when we're withholding from other people, then other people don't trust us. So then when they don't trust us, then they withhold from us. And then when they withhold from us, then we don't trust them and we withhold again from them. So you can see how this can get pretty compounded very quickly. And when we look at couples counseling, this is a big key component. Something high stress happened. We went inward. We withheld from ourselves, which then inevitably made it that we were withholding from our partner. And this is where the negative dynamic starts. Sharing and honesty. So moving that trust feedback loop to trusting others and showing grace and humility, being just open and honest. You're allowed to make mistakes. And making mistakes does not mean failure. The second we are in a dichotomous statement, all or nothing, good or bad, always and never, we are in an anxious place, which means we are in a negative cycle. And then the goals and processes is really there to help us overcome our challenges and setbacks. It creates an opportunity to be dedicated to getting things done, even when sometimes we don't feel our purpose is there. And understanding purpose and success comes with that roadmap of goals and objectives, intention setting, building a vision, and sticking to this idea of our image of what we hope each day will be filled with when we achieve the idea of success. So we're wanting to understand a broad idea of, I want freedom. I don't want to feel like I'm chained to a desk all the time. I want to know that, like, if something were to happen, I have a safety net and I could pivot very quickly and easily. I want to know that my family is around me and I have, a large group of people that I never feel alone. And what we're doing is through intention setting and goals and objectives, we are doing one thing a day that emulates what our vision of success is. So if we want people around us, then we need to engage with people every day. If we want a sense of security, then we need to do one mindful task of saving every single day. And it doesn't have to be huge, diets are the easiest thing to be able to compare to, and I hate it because it's a trigger, but it's $1 billion industry for a reason. So we get into this all or nothing thinking with diets, right? I have to restrict and I can only eat like a bunny, or I'm going to binge, like I'm out of control. It doesn't matter. I'm not worth anything anyways. Just give me everything. And when we try to start a diet, the famous saying is the diet starts tomorrow. And what that is saying is that we're putting it off. We're avoiding it, right? We're doubting ourselves that we can do it, so we push it off. Well, it's my best friend's birthday. I'm not going to not, eat. I don't want to be on a diet. I'm going on a cruise. I'm on vacation. I don't want to. Like, we can have 1,000 ways in which we justify. There's over 50 clinical terms for avoidance. There's even more for justification. And so we can, but then we're not connected to our vision. We're not connected to our values. We are negative cycling. So it's not that we're going to give everything up. We're going to find moderation. And so we're going to say, it's my friend's birthday. We're a little wild. I may have had 5 drinks that night, but you know what? I'm going to be mindful and I'm going to order water with my drink. And I think that that's going to help me to maybe get down to like 3. I'm not going to judge myself if I still get 5, because at least I hydrated and I did one meaningful act that allowed me to be present with this decision. So that is purpose. And then dedicating ourselves. So how do we stay dedicated to success? This is the big one. It takes 21 days to build a habit. And by January 5th, 13th, we've already lost all of our New Year's resolutions. So we want to create positive affirmations and valid data points that keep us in a mindful state to allow us to build atomic habits and for us to connect with a good enough self, which is really letting go of that sense of perfectionism and doing what is within your capacity of control. So here it is. Why is it so hard? It's because of cognitive dissonance. Logically, I know. Emotionally, I cannot feel. And so we have the bad brain here which is the cycle, the negative cycle we get into. We have that distressing feeling or belief. We leads into avoidance. We get temporary dopamine pull and temporary relief. We build long-term anxiety and then this long-term narrative of our value and our safety. We have lack of capacity that we can actually do it. We have low motivation to do better. We have implicit devaluing. So if you zoomed in on this distressing feeling or belief, you'll have the emotional reactions and negative dynamic. So our reactionary emotions, our attachment, our trauma and chronic stress, MRI studies say that those are exactly the same in the brain. So we're all technically traumatized, anybody who went through COVID. And then our perceived expectations, all cycling times 5 times 10. That's a lot happening. And each time we do that, we build cognitive distortions, all or nothing thinking, always or nevers, overgeneralization, personalization. We're building that negative narrative. We're invoicing our partner, which means we're allowing our past to occupy our present. And then we typically have an emotion response of either shutting down or having these angry outbursts or these emotional bursts that is hard for us to control. So all of this is happening for everybody. Nobody gets a pass. Everybody goes into this. It's in different times, and you see the universal constructs. There's 5 universal constructs that we all have. And when that gets triggered, that we don't feel like we're safe or we're being heard or we have agency, things happen very, very quickly. We go into a survival state and then we're off to the races. We are on fight, flight, freeze, and we cannot make an action-oriented decision. So let's look at the positive side. The good news is that any point in time in this cycle, you can interject, go to neutral, and find one step that will start leading you into a positive cycle. So that's the good news. So here we see the grounding and acceptance without judgment is that the lightning bolt into our distressing thought and feeling, and it kicks off the positive cycle. So we take one purpose-driven step. It gives us an increase in value, motivation, and capacity. It gives us a dopamine pull. It gives us long-term growth and a lot of motivation to want to get another purpose-driven step. We call these micro wins. And so if you go on my newsletter this week on LinkedIn, you can actually look at the micro wins GIF. There's one there. And then I think I've also posted those micro wins on my page. So please go take a look. And you can see how we kind of habit stack to get into a positive place. But the fact that we have fight, flight, freeze, motivation, momentum, and dopamine pools and positive cycle, all of these things are what gets us into a positive place. But what holds us back? Because if it was that easy to be successful, we'd all be millionaires, we'd all be driving Bentleys, and we'd all have 6 packs, right? So it's not that easy. So what's holding us back? Our perceived reality is holding us back. Our universal constructs, our gratitude and suffering, and our doubt, that trust feedback loop. So we build these negative narratives for ourselves. We close ourselves off to vulnerability. We seek external validators, and we become very concrete in the way in which we look at life. And then we are back into that negative cycle. So what does our journey for success looks like? We are all in recovering. And so being on the path of wellness and success is about being aware, finding grounding in the here and now, finding acceptance that we're all in this together. Life is chaotic. So enjoy the party. If it's miserable now, get on that gratitude spectrum. Find one thing you can do to move you closer to gratitude. We ground in valid data points or positive affirmations. We find one step forward that we can do. We can maintain that sense of mindfulness and being in the present without judgment. We changes our thoughts, our feelings, and our beliefs due to that positive cycling, and we open ourselves up to maintain that with vulnerability and accountability. And so this is what we're doing. Both of these slides are actually how I work with my clients, whether in therapy or coaching. These are the things we're doing. We're finding the activating event. We're changing our beliefs. We're looking at the consequences. We're disrupting those beliefs, and we're finding new beliefs that we're creating. And we're doing this through awareness, acceptance, and action. And on action, we're doing countering and challenging and opposite action as a way of creating new valid data points to get out of our toxic thinking. So let's look at the psychology of success. The three pillars, or I think I want to call it the three pillars, the three key steps to success is emotional regulation, the goals and objectives, and vision, and interpersonal connections. And all three of these key pillars or key steps really help us to move to a more successful, purpose-driven state. And so with emotional regulation, you can see here that we're in that lizard brain. So we're in that temporal lobe. We're just fight, flighting, or freezing. And as long as we're there, we're in a reactionary state. We're not really capable of being present. But when we can ground, when we can accept with not judgment, then we can find a leadership presence. We'll build the self-awareness, and then we'll get into that social intelligence, linking into interpersonal connections. And the mindset optimizers really help us to build the perspective that we need to stay on that roadmap to success towards our vision and our goals. And so here is an activity that we can do. Success breathing is really also called box breathing. And we can take box breaths by counting 4. So inhale to the count of 4, hold for the count of 4, exhale to the count of 4, and then repeat, and hold, repeat. Build the box. Just build the box as you breathe. It will help you to calm down and find your aware present state. That will give you the opportunity to find awareness. Where am I? Acceptance, no shame in the game. There's never any shame in the game. We are all going through the same thing. There's 5 universal constructs we are all going through, just different times and ways we act and react with it. So we're all in this together. There's no shame in the game. It's the way the mind is working. It's just another organ trying to survive. And so we can find the acceptance that this is where we're at so that we can find an action to get out of it and make that one purpose-driven step forward. And that's what I have for success. It's a complicated and tangled mindset. It's comprised of being mindfully grounded, having clear goals and visions, emotional regulation, and meaningful interpersonal connections. At any point, we're subjected to falling into irrational narratives. But with practice and training, we can actually ground and find a neutral just as quickly. So it's not helpless. It is a lot, and it does take time. And with the right training and guidance, you too can be a master of your mindset. I am Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions. I do offer individualized supports for everyone at their stage of change. My goal is to make everyone live a happier and healthier life, to get into these positive cycles and see how you can have unshakable confidence. It is not a personality state. It is a learned trait. So anyone can have it. And when you're in these positive cycles, it's really easy to feel like you have an influx of valid data points, and it just overtakes all of the doubt that's just sitting there for years. We didn't get into, and I do talk with my clients about implicit and explicit memory. And just think of implicit memory as this entire database of every experience you've ever had. And there's so much wrong messaging because of perception. it gets all convoluted. And so that is where the doubt comes from. And there's a lot of it. So I have self-help books. I have an accountability monthly subscription. I've got success groups. I've got coaching programs, individual therapy. And for those who are really wanting to dive in and make a massive change in their lives today, I have some really great boutique retreats. We're seeing such incredible gains with the people who are coming into these boutique retreats. I have 2 beautiful homes. One is in the mountains. It is pitch black, so I can't show you that, but it is private. It is a private mountaintop estate and a private 17-acre lake. And we go and we work on and we do exercises on the private lake. We go on hikes. We really connect with nature and forest therapy. We have a lot of other ways that we do self-care. We can bring nutrition in. Everything is individualized for that one person. And it's, small 2 to 4 people in these retreats that we have. And then we also have a place in the Forgotten Coast of Florida. And again, we are on a private little street. There are houses on either side, but we're in the treetops, so you don't see them. You just see deer swimming across and bears swimming across the little harbor inlet. You see otters playing and owls and eagles flying amongst the natural preserve. There's about 40,000 acres of protected land in that backyard. So lots of great things that I have to help empower others to live happier and healthier lives. I have 2 success groups that are starting next week. We have the women's support group that is starting on Monday, November 18th at 5:30 Eastern Standard Time. What we're doing is we're going through part 2 of my book, which is emotional regulation. That's going to be finding that mindset of mindfulness. It's emotional regulation, it's distress tolerance, it's stress management and trauma, grief beyond loss. There's a lot of times we are grieving in life and we're like, God, I don't think I'm depressed. I don't think I have depression in my family. Why do I feel like nothing is enjoyable right now? You're grieving. You're grieving a new life cycle. Maybe you're an empty nester. Maybe you're just getting out into the world for the first time. You grieve life cycles. You grieve expectations. We have so many perceived expectations and messaging and implicit messaging that we're doing. And so we're grieving these things. And so we're going into what grief is. And again, finding no shame in the game. We're looking at perceived reality and the universal constructs. We're looking at gratitude and suffering are on the same spectrum and how to move to gratitude and away from suffering. So lots of good things. And we're doing this for professional women to be able to bond in their experience in that phase of their life while using this information. And then we have a men's group on Tuesdays at 5:30. The men's group is there to grow beyond our past relationships. So I've got a really great group of men, and I'm looking to have other people really benefit from and value from their experiences and sharing those experiences of feeling like you've just been broken up with, you're going through a divorce, maybe you're just in the beginning stages, like your wife dropped a bomb or your partner dropped a bomb on you that said, I'm out, I'm so unhappy, I can't do this anymore. And you're like, what do I do from here? We have a group for that. So we're going to go through that emotional regulation. Emotional dysregulation is not just too much emotion, it's also the lack of emotion. So many times there's implicit messaging, especially for males, where it's like, suck it up, buttercup. It's be a man. You shouldn't cry. Boys don't cry. And that gets into you. And then all of a sudden you have no way of expressing these emotions. And it usually comes out in a very angry way. And so we're going to look at all of that and we're going to realize that we're going to validate that that's what's happened and find better ways so that we can have more connected communication, and that may bridge your relationship and it may help you to be in a better relationship. Because when it comes to the negative dynamic, we are doomed to repeat it. So if you don't want another negative dynamic with a new warm body, I really highly recommend, if it's not in this group, to come and ask me about individual counseling, because we are doomed to repeat the dynamics we don't find closure with. and learn the lessons we need to learn. Seeking success and living a life worth living is about staying in the present without judgment. We are living on the recovery spectrum, fighting to stay present and moving between relapse and healing every day. There's no shame in it. We're constantly fighting for that sense of presence. I am here. I'm Jennifer Evans with Empowering Wellness Counseling Solutions. If you go to my website, counselingwellnesssolutions.com, there's a little button at the bottom that says book an intro call. That is 15 free minutes with me to ask any question that you want to figure out your dynamic. I am really good, not to toot my own horn, but I have years, over 20 years of experience where I have done more than just counseling. I have advocated for people. I have been the subject matter expert for the mental health system of states, multiple states actually. And I did a lot of clinical consulting with hospitals and intensive outpatient programs. So when I hear anything to do with behavior, it's just like the spidey senses go off, and I can tell you exactly what somebody has said, what their experience was. I can tell you when your trauma is. I am an expert in behavior, and I would love to talk to you about what is going on, allow you to let go of some of that shame, and build a plan for you to live a happier and healthier life. Thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, please let me know.